All right, hey there, and welcome back to another episode of Sporadically Relevant. As always, I'm your host, Mackenzie Pauley, and today I am by myself, so I hope that doesn't bother anybody. I'm pretty much just going to be talking about some stuff that I found interesting throughout the week, I guess. So, first, I want to start off, I guess, by talking about the suggestion by Donald Trump to overturn the 14th Amendment. I've read some articles suggesting that this is his way to get people to stop talking about the bombs that were sent to top-ranking Democratic officials and affiliates, or just people associated with the party. I guess the argument goes that immigration and this hardline stance is a winner, especially with drumming up support amongst his base. I don't know if I buy that it was out of sound political calculation, but I mean, it could be. I don't think this should surprise anyone, really. I mean, he did again mention this on the campaign trail, and I think most of his supporters will see that it's just him trying to keep a campaign promise. So this all started, apparently, when Trump was being interviewed by some new HBO show that's going to be appearing this weekend, I guess. And this particular part got leaked or was released or something, and now it's obviously garnering a lot of attention. I'll read a quote. Let's see, I've got it right here. I'll read a quote from John Wagner's Washington Post article about the controversy. So it said, quote, this is Trump speaking. We're the only country in the world where a person comes in and has a baby, and the baby is essentially a citizen of the United States for 85 years with all those benefits, Trump said during an interview with Axios scheduled to air as part of a new HBO series starting this weekend. It's ridiculous, and it has to end. The funny thing about this to me is that clearly it's unconstitutional. I mean, even Donald Trump must know. I mean, he must understand that this simply cannot be done with an executive order. I mean, that's it. This is not something that you can just do with an executive order. It's just not in the president's wheelhouse. It is clearly in direct defiance with the 14th Amendment and would just be rejected outright if he actually tried to go ahead and do it. That really is weird. The Constitution is the infallible document to conservatives until it secures the citizenship of people they don't want to be here. I guess the argument is that these kids are, quote-unquote, anchor babies, or just, quote, anchor babies who do nothing but become a way for their illegal parents to stay in the country and use them to live off welfare programs and yada, yada, yada. Look, a part of me gets that argument. I always say stuff like that, and I think to the annoyance of some of my friends or just some, people on the left, that, I actually do, in a way, get that argument, but it's only because when I was growing up, that's the kind of stuff, you'd hear your dad say, or you'd hear kind of people in the community say. But, look, the issue really is that when people say that, and then you can talk to them, usually, unless they're actually just kind of, racist, you can kind of get them to go, hey, it's more complicated than that. A lot of the beliefs and stereotypes about, anchor babies or whatever just really isn't true. I mean, and, we're not giving the parents any of these benefits. You're giving the children who are American citizens, right? So you can kind of get people who are hesitant, or at least their knee-jerk reaction is to be like, yeah, hell yeah, repeal the 14th, to sort of come around and see that that's not the right answer. But yeah, I get the knee-jerk reaction to undocumented immigrants having children here, and those and now those children are just citizens, right? However, if you look at the issue for more than 5 seconds, again, when you think about it longer than a minute, you realize that these kids are Americans. They were born in the land of the free, and while it may seem logical I don't want to say logical, but why some people may think it's logical to turn your heart off and say, yeah, well, if we stop allowing them to become citizens, then their parents will stop crossing and having them here. It is actually, in my opinion, philosophically a garbage point. Look, I'm an American citizen because I was born here. And so why shouldn't they be? They were born here as well. If you're born in the United States, then what are we going to do? Ship you back to a country that you weren't born into? You are part of the United States because you were birthed within the borders. That's just how it works. I mean, that's why repealing the 14th is so ridiculous. I mean, could you imagine the logistics of that? That, oh, well, you see, son, I know you're 4 years old and you've never been to Honduras, but that's where your mom is from, and sorry, but her paperwork's not in order, so we're just gonna kidnap you and set you out in the streets of Honduras. Like, is that honestly what Donald Trump is suggesting? I mean, that is fucking crazy. That's just heartless and crazy. That doesn't work. And, well, you know what? Maybe it could work, but it would be it would be just the moral downfall of the United States if we did that, Look, the thing is, like, these kids, they're going to integrate they're going to integrate fairly well into our nation. It's not that, and their parents are too. I don't get that. Like, look, just because someone's from South America or Mexico or wherever does not mean that they're somehow not going to fit in the United States. And look, immigration is a complicated issue. I'm not going to pretend that it's something that doesn't need to be debated. It's something that doesn't need to be talked about. Of course it does. And I'm not for open borders. I don't think that's the solution. It just simply isn't. It completely defeats the purpose of the nation state. It completely would undermine our ability to implement the kind of social programs that I want. I mean, I support single-payer health care. I support, raising of the minimum wage. I mean, these are things that require a finite amount of citizens to care for and a labor force that isn't sort of bogged down with cheap labor. Like, I get that, but you go after companies that are hiring undocumented workers. You don't just punish human beings that are looking for a better life for themselves and their family. That doesn't make any sense. These aren't, no matter what Donald Trump says, these are not rapists and criminals and things. The vast majority are just people that are trying to escape truly horrendous conditions, whether it be economic or, violence, various forms of gang violence, or government violence. I mean, this is what America is about. We are supposed to help those in need. I mean, what is the point of being the global hegemon? What is the point of being the dominant nation if we also won't lead the world with our morality? I mean, there is no point if we will not do the right thing. There just isn't. So, no, look, and I'm not saying I have every answer to the immigration issue. There's a lot of debate that needs to be had, and we're not going to have that debate if people are wanting to go down the road of extremes. And the Democratic Party is not going down the road of extremes. There are no Democrats that are arguing for open borders. I've talked to people that argue for open borders. They're super far and in between, and they can usually just sort of be brought around, and you can kind of just go, and you just present kind of some facts, and a lot of times they sort of back down. But that's the issue, man. It seems to me that the Democrats are offering a real moderate solution, saying, hey, yeah, we're for increased border security always, right? But we're also for an easier pathway to citizenship. These are things that is something that George W. Bush said back in the day, that this is not a radical position. This is something the Republicans used to be game for. Ronald Reagan said this, both Bushes. I mean, this issue used to be more bipartisan, and then all of a sudden, it's almost like the hacks at Fox News and the right-wingers started just saying Democrats for open borders. And then some lefties just took that to be like the thing. Oh, yeah, I guess that we are, because they fall into that narrative trap that the right paints, and that's so dumb. That's so dumb. But yeah, Donald Trump trying to repeal the 14th Amendment with an executive order. Oh my! Surely to God he knows that just wouldn't work. That's just not something you can do. It's funny because even Paul Ryan was basically denying it as possible and basically outright claiming it is unconstitutional. You're wrong, Mr. President, when that snake in the grass opposes your nonsense. So yeah, just a quick mention of what Trump is suggesting right now about the 14th Amendment. I mean, damn, I know it gets old playing if Obama had done this card because the argument holds little or zero sway over the minds of Republicans. But if Obama had advocated for the destruction of a constitutional amendment, I wonder how Fox News would have covered it. Yeah, I doubt they would have said anything short of, this is it, real America. The moment we've all been preparing for. Let's just take to the streets and destroy this bitch. Yeah, come on. I don't know. I just think the messaging there would have been ridiculous. I mean, if Obama had been advocating for dismantling an amendment to the Constitution. But, yeah, I don't know. This is just going to be one of those things where Trump supporters cheer, Democrats boo, and then we all just move on to tomorrow to see what the next controversy is. That's what it's going to be. But, in a lot of ways, the immigration debate is one of those situations where I think Democrats are struggling to balance their two main camps, right? So you have kind of working Democrats who have been sort of part of the Democratic coalition for a long, long time. For decades and decades and decades. These are people that are pretty pro-union. They're pro-union. Typically are pretty anti-immigration, right? Because, again, influxes of cheap labor does complicate the job market. And, that kind of white working class used to be the Democratic Party's bread and butter, right? And slowly but surely, the Republican Party has been siphoning off those votes, and part of me does kind of believe it's to do with the Democratic Party's sort of acceptance of progressive or what today is considered left-wing social policies. So, which I think is fine. I mean, the Democratic Party, I think, has done a great job of calling out racists for being racists. I think that obviously some on the left, like the, Tumblrite left, kind of took it too far, and any criticism of anything is considered racist or whatever. But that's a whole separate issue. I mean, that's just a weird minority, a vocal, dumb minority on the internet of just wimpy lefties that can't handle anything. But there's wimpy right-wingers too, oh my God, the red Starbucks cup shit. That's just people, man. It's not like people are wimps in a lot of ways. But, back to what I was saying, they're trying to balance that kind of, look, we are open-minded. We are not opposing people coming to the United States to try to better themselves. But that's pretty much widely supported among what I like to say, kind of the woke left kind of thing, where it is, any resistance to people entering the United States is considered to come from a place of bigotry, which isn't true. But a lot of times, so if people are pretty strong against anti-immigration, it doesn't mean that they're all racist, but there's some definitely weird racist overtones to that really throws a wrench in the whole thing. But again, if you're completely just economically minded, then yeah, I mean, there's some valid criticisms to just having a flood of migrants coming into the United States, crisis at the border or whatever it's called. But again, flood is an exaggeration. It's not a flood. It's just there are deep-seated socioeconomic problems in south of our border, and America is for the longest time was a sort of bastion of hope for many people. It still is. I mean, it still is. But yeah, so, and the kind of the coastal liberals that have a lot of money, who are, I mean, they don't have any interest in economically leftist policies. They don't want to increase taxes on themselves. They don't want to that's mostly it, increase taxes to provide health care for other people. That they're not really interested in that. But they all want to go to their coastal elite parties and sort of drink champagne and talk about how woke they are and how in absolute support they are of whatever, right? And yeah, I mean, that's probably not how someone feels like living in Texas or along the border. They're probably like, no, they might have other concerns, right? And again, not every single person who has reservations about the immigration crisis in the United States is racist. But they're sort of siding with real racists, and I think even if originally those views were coming from a good place, they're getting radicalized. I mean, this is like, people are not born to a lot of these like racist kind of ideas. They're sort of shaped, right? And so that's a real problem. And I think that the Democrats need to somehow fix their messaging to where they recognize the legitimate concerns from working class citizens, while also recognizing that, yes, we do not want to have rhetoric that emboldens violence or suggests that the people coming over are an actual threat. They're not a national security risk. That's just asinine. And, and that's hard to do. That's damn hard to do. But yeah, I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg in the immigration problem in the United States. And that's, again, we're not even delving into really any details of what policies could fix it. I mean, like, the policies that could really fix it would be enforcing border security, streamlining people so they can become citizens, so they can pay taxes, so they can be a part of the system, and so they can have, be legitimized in the workforce, and so they can be paid appropriate wages, so it doesn't drive down the market the way it does when these people aren't on the books, and you can essentially, companies and corporations and just individuals can get away with paying them basically nothing to work. Because, yeah, that's a problem. But again, why are we spending the majority of our time blaming desperate people who are willing to work for nothing instead of the companies that are so unwilling to pay people a livable wage that they entice? They advertise down there. They advertise in places in South America to come up to the United States and work. Like those companies should be held accountable. And I think everybody's in agreement that they should. But like Republicans, right wingers, you do not do it. And so my question is this: is your personal prejudices getting in the way of actually solving this problem? And I think that's a legitimate question, because the way I look at it, it seems that way. So, but all right, that's just a quick look at some of the stuff that happened today with Donald Trump, some of my thoughts on immigration. So, just a quick little episode. I'm going to leave it there. And all right, well, right on. Hopefully, next time we talk, I'll be talking to somebody. Justin might be back on, or John, or whomever. So, all right. Thank you guys very much.